Okay, so for the next thing for the files from NHL 95, or sorry, the sound files from NHL 95. I think I was already looking at the MIDI files, how to extract them. I had some familiarity with like the KMS. Like I had an idea that the KMS were the MIDI files, like even back in the day. But it seemed complicated, so I just extracted it using DOSBox. And so I'm not really interested in making utility for it because it seems like it's complicated, right? Um, and there's other ways I can get that data out, so I don't need to. So, the digital file. So what I did, I think I just like sorted the files by file size because I was thinking like where I've always like been curious where are the sound in-game sound files. Um, so X Bruce, I know that's the in-game arena announcer. Like I don't think there's a way to extract the sound data. Although you know what? Now that I've done some digging on these other sound formats, maybe I can take a look at the data and maybe there's a way I can figure it out. I don't know if anything involves like advanced compression routines, like I don't know any of that stuff, right? If it's like simple routines like the sprites, the spit format sprites that I extracted, those were like it was such a basic compression routine, right? So the in-game sounds, the dig files, yeah, I like didn't really see anything in the header. Like it didn't tip me off on any way. I was like, hey, let me just throw this. I think it was into Goldwave. I think it literally was into Goldwave, and I think I had been playing around with the IFF files as well. Um, but I think I just said like, hey, let me just um, throw this into Goldwave and let's see. And I don't know if I just started playing around with the formats. Um, I think I was just playing around with the formats, and I was like, let me see if I can figure this out. And like, so I don't know if the sound is coming out in the recording, but it sounded like a little off. So I just played around with the sample rate, and I think I figured out like 5,500 sounded about right. Either 6,000 or 5,500. But yeah, it's like super simple. I think what the tool I created did was to separate the sounds, which is not perfect yet, but there is like it's basically zeroed out. I don't know if there's like a header in there or if it literally is just waveform data and the game just tells it it has an index. That's what I think it probably is. The game just has an index of where each sound starts. But I think they just literally just shoved like a bunch of waveforms together and it might not even have a header. Yeah. And so the areas which don't have any waveform data, they're just zeros in the file. Um, so I can even probably show you. Yeah, so like zero. So I searched. I again, it was like a Chat GPT thing. Um, this guy here. I think I started with something simple, which was I wanted it to create a script that would just identify all of the different file sections for WAV files. And then I had a conversation with ChatGPT to improve it to where it ended up being, which is a tool that actually extracts the wave data. And again, it would have bugs, right? Like a variable like wasn't declared, and like I had to ask it a few times, and until it finally fixed the bug. So yeah, that was that IFF. So let's see IFF. Uh, let's go to, I think, sound util. And yeah, let's go to calendar.iff. So one thing I found is the things that stood out to me. Okay, it's an IFF file. There's form, there's body. I did some Google searching. Um, Eventually, I think I landed up into I ended up doing a bunch of Google searching, and I eventually ended up on yeah, reading a bunch of these documents about interchange, but it was unclear. Like, it just seems like a standard format, right? It didn't seem like it was a format for audio. It's like it can be a format for anything. Um, and I saw this paper, which was really dense, and I was trying to ask ChatGPT about it as well, and it came up with some code which didn't exactly work, and like, it was I it asked me to use this node package called IFF parser, which it didn't. Like, it says like there's a package called IFF parser which has a version like 1 point no point 4.0 0.4.0, and there was no package that existed. There was a version of IFF parser that was like 0.1.0, which had different documentation. So I had to feed it the documentation of the IFF parser. I had to feed it the documentation. So this was another article with IFF. So I had to feed it the IFF documentation. Um, and then and the one thing I found out, it was that it's in the header too, like playing around with that IFF parser, is that it said, hey, it's a chunk of like type 8SVX, and then there's like another like chunk of type B header or something like that. And then I think the thing I found out is like the waveform is like in the body chunk. So I was using that IFF parser, or using ChatGPT to help me create it, and again, I had to play around with it and test things out. I think in the end, I got it to write. I'm trying to see actually. Let me look at the code. I don't remember if it still uses that library, the version that I actually released. Um, yeah, I think because the version that uses the library is useful because it would print out like a data structure of like what's in the IFF file. And that helped me understand how it worked, and helped me figure out how should I compose this question to ChatGPT, and that's how I figured out the 8SVX and the V header. Um, and then from there, yeah, it gave me some code, and it wasn't perfect. I think the thing that was weird, let me find the original version of this code. IFF to wave. I think it was extract IFF. This was the first version. Um, yeah, I was using this IFF parser, and again, ChatGPT helped, but like you can see, I commented out large piece of code because these were attempts from ChatGPT that I got, and I had to change around to get it to work with the actual version of IFF parser that was available. Um, and let me just run it. Let me show you. Okay, tools, SND util. Okay, so node extract ifs.js, and I think it was set to read like an example IFF file that I already did. Yeah, so this is me printing out the body chunk, but I think there's also, but let me just console.log the initial result as well. Yeah, so here I figured out, hey, it's 8 SVX. I think looking in the chunks, I think one was a V header chunk, one was a body chunk, and then doing more Googling, I found out, okay, body's definitely the waveform. And so I knew like, okay, this is the data I need to extract, and then I think I was having issues getting the data out of this buffer. And so I think I said screw it, and I'll go back to ChatGPT, feed in like all the relevant, or forget about the IFF parser, just feed in the documentation on this 8SVX format, and get it to write me a converter. And uh, the problem it had, just trying to look at this code again. No, sorry, not dig to WAV. I'm looking at the wrong code now. Let me look at the IFF code. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong code before. This is the IFF code that it extracted. So uh, the issue was it got the header wrong. It like had the samples per second at starting at offset 16, and it had the volume starting at offset 20, but the volume was coming out as 22,500, which I know is like the sample rate, right? So I knew that was wrong, and then the samples per second was coming out as like 22, which I thought maybe it's an abbreviation for like 22,500. But I'm thinking maybe it's the volume indicator, and I can play around later to see if I change uh, that 22 to, let's say, a 1 in game, does the volume sound lower then? So that's a way I can figure out what's actually in the header, right? Is if I play around with the actual file. So actually, let me look at that. I haven't looked at this at all. So calendar.iff at byte 16. So let's look at that. Let me see. Doesn't look like there's anything at byte 16. Sorry. Yeah, byte 16. Oh, v header index. What is v header index? Okay, so that's later then. I don't know where v header index is. Index of okay, so byte start from v header then. I see. Is that volume header? Is that what it means? Uh, okay, so from v header, the 16th byte from that is this, and it's saying that is the volume. I don't know, or I think yeah, I'm not sure. Um, there was that, and then the 20th byte was a 32-bit. The samples, yeah, the samples are at 20th, right? And what is it? That's a 16-bit. 16-bit. Oh, it's big endian, so maybe that's why I'm a little confused. Um, yeah, so I don't know how that volume stuff works. And now when I'm looking at this file raw, not exactly sure where the 22,500 is stored. But I didn't even get to this level, to be honest, right? I was just for this, it was purely just the documentation, chat GPT, hey, it sounds wrong, let me tweak it. And the other thing was is that the WAV file was like the output file just sounded wrong. So I can demonstrate this, I think. So if I just do const n equals, I think originally just sample minus 128. The way the sound samples work is uh, it's a value from 0 to 255, and then you minus it by 128. So it goes up to negative 127 or positive 127. And so if I run this, so let's go to my Yeah, NHL tools, IFF to WAV. Okay, and let me see what files I have here. Sorry, CD IFF to WAV here. Okay, I don't have an IFF file. I need to get one. Dot backslash EA slash 95 PC slash ISO content star.iff to dot. Okay. So let's do node IFF to WAV. And some of these files work, some don't. I think calendar.iff was one that was working fine for me. All right, so calendar.iff. One thing I was taking note of is what's the maximum minimum value c-spec, how it is. This is the header output. I've corrected this. So one of the things I found was that it was saying 22,500 in the header, but it was playing twice as fast. So I divided it by 2. Like I don't know why, right? I don't know if that's in the spec or these files are just labeled wrong. I'm not sure. File length, I think this helps determine file length, but there was some problem with that too, and so I still need to fix it. It's not perfect. That's why some of the files don't work. But yeah, so let me actually open this in Goldwave now. So IFF to WAV and output.wav. So you can see the waveform. And I was seeing nothing. But then when I play it, and I don't know if you can hear the audio, but when you play it, you can actually hear a little bit. And then I found that, okay, I know I can maximize the sound values, right? So if I maximize volume, boom, I have the waveform now. And now so it's like a little, at least to me, it's a little distorted. I actually haven't gone back and compared it to in-game because I was comparing this with the Sega CD version of the music. The Sega CD version sounds way clearer to me. This was sounding kind of off to me. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this is how it is, but it was sounding kind of off to me, just like a linear extraction. And so and then the other thing was the volume was so low. And first I was trying to multiply it up, but then multiplying it up didn't work very well because it was like a linear multiplication. And what that meant, and I don't know, maybe Goldwave is not doing a linear multiplication, which is why this doesn't sound that bad. But I was doing a linear multiplication, it sounded horrible, right? So then I decided to just square it, basically times it by itself. Um, because I was thinking like the other problem was that it's a 8-bit source file, but it's a 16-bit output file, right? So 8-bit takes 0 to 255. 16-bit is like 0 to 65535 or whatever, right? So it's like 256 times 256. That's the amount of value. So I was like, okay, well, if I just square it, like I will scale it up exponentially in the correct way. And so I did that. And so let's output this and let's hear it now. So yeah, so to me it sounded like a little bit better. It still doesn't sound like right to me, but I also have to go back to the game. I haven't to see it. It definitely sounds better than I was doing some other experiments as opening it as a raw file, and I think that's probably a part I skipped over is like I had been trying to open it as a raw file within Goldwave, and you could kind of hear the music, but it sounds super distorted, like really bad. So I knew that like, hey, maybe there's a way to read this data, and that it was in some sort of raw format and not like some weird compression. So yeah, I don't know if that gave any insight to my process on how to figure out things, or if it was just a bunch of ramblings of a madman. But Yeah, that is my that was my process to figure out this stuff.